Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. My name is David Reed. It is my privilege to welcome on a personal acting hero of mine today, John Billingsley. He played Simon Coombs in Stargate SG-1, but he will always be in my heart as the great Phlox. John, how are you, sir?
I am wonderful. Thank you very much for the sweet introduction. I appreciate that.
It's wonderful to have you. You know, looking back on your body of work, so much of it's science fiction. Um, it's hard to figure out where to start. Have you always been a fan of science fiction? Has it just been something you've fallen into? Tell me how you've gotten all caught up in it.
Yeah, I think possibly people who watch a lot of science fiction, their perception is I've done more science fiction than other things. But I don't know. Obviously, I was on a show for 4 years, and that kind of tilts the screen a smidge. But I don't know that I would necessarily have said that I had more work in that genre than in other genres. I mean, I've been an actor since I was a kid, so I was a stage actor for many years. Of course, no sci-fi there, and then 4 years on Trek. But beyond that, if there's anything I feel I've probably done more of, it's I've been more perp, serial killers, and child molesters on crime dramas. I was a big reader, have been a big reader my whole life. So I certainly am fairly familiar with a lot of the great masters of science fiction prose. But I was not a huge TV watcher
Yeah.
growing up. So I can't say that I came to the genre work from any great place of knowledge or passion, particularly.
But you knew what it was about and you knew the effect
Oh,
that it could
sure.
have on people.
Oh, sure,
So,
sure. No, and
yeah.
I'd watched the original Star Trek. I was
Yeah.
6. It premiered in 1966. So I watched it in syndication when I lived in New York. And certainly when I booked Enterprise, I knew that it was a life-changing gig and that it was, an opportunity to become part of an amazing, which it has been, an amazing lifelong journey. I mean, however many years has been since our show ended, and our show was not by any means. In fact, it was the least successful show, but still, you're part of an incredible family.
That's true.
Uh, be in the Star Trek universe, and I've really enjoyed that.
We recently lost Manny Coto.
Yes, I know we did, and I do a lot of things in my non-acting time, including I'm part of a team of people who do something called the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network Purple Stride event. Manny passed away from pancreatic cancer, as did my mother, as did Jonathan Frakes' brother, as did and a lot of people. And Kitty Swink, Armin Shimmerman's wife, is a
Yeah.
survivor. So we have a team, and this year we made more money than any team in the history of Purple Stride has ever made track against pancreatic cancer. And Juan Carlos Coto, Manny Coto's brother, was a huge part of that. Manny's a wonderful guy.
Where can people go to donate? I want to pull it up.
Yeah, it's the organization is called the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, and every year they do something called Purple Stride, which is a walk that takes place all over the country, 60 cities. It took place this year, April 27th, but our team, which is Track Against Pancreatic Cancer, we have actually a month after this event to continue raising money. So if people want to kind of contribute, we have until the 27th of May, and that will count towards our total. The event is called Purple Stride. If you go to Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, Purple Stride, track against pancreatic cancer, you'll find our team.
Okay. Purple Stride is one word. Celebrities, survivors, and caregivers united and supporters nationwide at the ultimate walk to end pancreatic cancer. I will be
It's a,
adding to this after
oh,
our
bless
call.
you.
So
It's an amazing,
pancan.org.
it's really an amazing organization. I do a lot of charity work, and my mother passed away in 1990 from pancreatic
Oh
cancer, and
my.
at that time the survivor rate was about 2%. It's now up to almost 14%, which doesn't sound like a lot, except it's thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. And it's, I think, to a great extent attributable to one of the things this group does so brilliantly, which is to raise awareness, not just for people who are afflicted and their families, but for doctors, many of whom have always felt like pancreatic cancer, nothing I can do, walk away. There's been a real sea change in people's understanding that it's not necessarily a death sentence. And there's also been a sea change in terms of helping people understand that symptoms that they might tend to dismiss could be actually symptoms of pancreatic cancer, and early detection means everything. My mother had backaches and stomach aches, and she was a stoic. It's like, nah, finally we
Yeah,
got her.
suck it up.
Yeah, that was
But
just her, her
yeah,
nature. By the time we got to the doctor, and they did a test, and then wait 2 weeks, they did a test. By the time they discovered what it was like, yeah, you got a few months.
so early
Uh,
detection is so key. Wow, I didn't
so
realize so many of the Star Trek family had been affected.
Camden Toy passed away recently, if you know from Buffy, and I don't know if he was on Angel, but on
Mm.
Buffy. Yeah, yeah. It's the third worst cancer, and the fastest growing cancer, which sounds perverse since I'm saying that there actually is a higher, survivor rate.
Yeah,
But it's also early detection means more people are
yeah.
saying, I have pancreatic cancer. Many people were passing away from pancreatic cancer without even really necessarily realizing that's what they had.
We have the technology. It sounds like it's largely a mindset change.
It is many
You
things.
know,
It's research, of course, and
yeah.
the medical research is. Although I've played many scientists on TV, in real life I'm a bubblehead, so I won't pretend to actually explain what some of these amazing things are that the docs are doing. They've been explained to me, and I just go, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
I play one on TV,
I
so it's
play
it's
one
going in,
on
but I don't know if it's
TV,
going
yes.
right.
But in real life, I couldn't spot the endocrine system with 4 hands. It's like, where is it? Somewhere beneath the armpit or under the.
I would,
However, I
yeah.
have gotten the chance to meet with a lot of doctors and a lot of people associated with this organization, and it is really extraordinary. They are doing a lot of their funding goes to research. A lot of their funding is going to necessary lobbying so that the federal government kicks in more money. And cancer research is a part of a continuum. The work that this organization is doing, it's cancer research qua. A lot of it is directed towards what is the issue with pancreatic cancer specifically.
Mm,
But any cancer researcher will tell you that the work being done on ovarian cancer, the work being done on pancreatic cancer, it's all connected.
wow. Okay.
Uh, yeah,
Well, after we're finished
we got
talking,
right in. We got right
no,
into like, the heavy stuff.
I appreciate. No, go for the most important stuff first. So after
Okay,
we
now I have to
finish,
make 5 jokes. I have to make 5 quick jokes so that you think, oh my God, I don't want to listen to an hour.
no, once I'm done with this one, everyone can refresh the page, and I'll have links in the description below where you can, at the very least, educate yourself more on what's going on. And
We'll start talking about cancer, and then I'll end talking about hunger. And in between, we can talk about Stargate.
Yeah, but I want to talk about a little bit more Star Trek first. Number
Okay.
one, the fact that they wouldn't let you make bird calls after the pilot when you were trying to put them in is absolutely absurd. He was from a bird species, clearly, and they should have let you do, rather than
I'm not
mastering the
sure
call
it
for your
was-
bat.
I don't think he was necessarily clearly from a bird species. I just thought, you've obviously heard this story before, that when I auditioned, they didn't tell me anything except come in with a slight alien accent. So I interpreted that as, a funny voice and a lanyap. What's the little extra? What's the fillip? So I decided that perhaps on his own planet he was a bird, and I squawked.
Yeah,
And
it made sense to me.
Yeah,
So.
it made sense to me. But clearly, I was not intended to be the bird. They never made me look like a bird. They never talked. They just never said no. They never clearly said, "By the way, John, we hired you in spite of the squawking, not because of the squawking." That would have been helpful. So the first day on set, I wouldn't have squawked and made an ass of myself.
Oh, that's funny.
Sure, the crew was going like, "Why is this guy squawking in the middle of his scene?"
All the technical babble that he's got to do, and on top of that, he's making
yeah.
bird calls.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Plus all the flapping. I mean, I was like, I was out in the backyard studying birds and like, Bonnie, I'm gonna go flap around in the backyard for a while.
Have fun, dear.
All for naught.
Oh, that's funny. The other thing that I admire about you is that as much as I love, and I do mean love, Star Trek, it's in my DNA since I wasn't allowed to watch anything but PBS and Star Trek. Yeah, and my dad wonders why I'm so mushy, and why aren't you more tough? It's because I didn't watch Wile E. Coyote get blown up every 5 minutes.
Wow, or every Western on television.
No,
Yeah.
I was blown away by you saying the truth. My issue about Star Trek is that it doesn't explain us here to us here in the 22nd and 23rd centuries. And one of your quotes I'll never forget is that from here now to somewhere out there, at some point, we all become gods. And it's like, yes, someone said the quiet part out loud. How do you change the society from this point to that? You know?
And in fairness, and I try and say this as well if I'm given the opportunity. I understand that the rebuttal to that, and Gene's rebuttal to that is that this is an aspirational program.
Correct.
This isn't. It's not a toolkit. How do I help you become a better human being? This is about imagine a time when we have become better human beings. That's and right. What we can do. At the same time, when he created Star Trek in 1966. We were in a peculiar period in world history. I think this was an odd and anomalous era post World War II, probably up until the early 70s, when there was a sense of, yes, we lived under a nuclear shadow, but there was a sense of optimism, particularly in America, and a sense of coming togetherness. The idea of a United Nations and a World Bank and any number of international structures that had seemingly come together to help address a lot of what had been viewed as insoluble problems in the post World War I era. Certainly, I think it's interesting that Star Trek has to be viewed with historicity. At the time it was created, there was a more optimistic country and a more optimistic sense of possibility. We now live in, I think, a somewhat dark time. And I think Star Trek has changed and shifted a bit in response. And I think contemporary Star Trek is a little bit different than, and rightfully so, than Gene's Star Trek.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the show has going to have to have a certain amount of evolution as it moves forward in order to maintain relevance with the people who are watching it. Also, at the same time, I think the success of the Orville suggests, and you've stood on those sets, suggests that there is room for a more optimistic version as well.
Oh yeah, so. I mean that's what I think is interesting about contemporary Star Trek is that Star Trek for years it was this is the iteration of Star Trek, you're going to take it or you're not going to take it. There's one original series, now there's one Next Generation, and now there's one Deep Space Nine, and then there's one Voyager. If you don't like it, you don't like it. There are now 5 iterations of Star Trek. There's Prodigy, there's Lower Decks, there's Discovery, there was Picard, there's A Strange New World, and yes, there's the Orville. So there are a lot of different flavors of ice cream in the Star Trek universe, as I think there should be. I'm stunned, obviously, as I think many people are in this universe, that Star Trek had this incredible recrudescence. I mean, when our show ended, I thought, and I said for years, it's like, I was on the show that killed Star Trek. Then the movies came along, the Chris Pine iteration, and I think people thought, okay, well, maybe there's a little shelf life there. The idea that all of this new television could be made, I don't think many of my peers saw coming at all.
Well,
it is quite...
You may argue, even tongue-in-cheek, that you were on the show that killed Star Trek, but...
I don't anymore because I didn't, but at the time I thought I did.
In terms of all of those classic shows, I rewatched the Xindi arc the most. There was something from the season 2 ending to getting back and having the planes shoot at the shuttle pod. That whole arc, there is some good sci-fi encapsulated in that. You can watch it one after the other. I think it was ahead of its time. I think the darker tone, especially in that season with, we're going to have to raid this ship over here for their warp core. Otherwise, our entire planet gets blown up. And you were right there saying sickbay will be ready. That's good Star Trek,
man. Manny Coto brought a real a new sensibility to the show, and no slang. I mean, much of this I've said a bajillion times, but I have nothing but the utmost respect for Rick and Brannon. It's so daunting to produce an hour of television every week
after all those years,
year after year after year after year after year, and they did not. The studio and the network did not give them a break. I mean, there were a number of years in which there was overlap when Next Generation was overlapping as it was going off the air with the incoming Deep Space Nine. Again, overlap with Deep Space and Voyager. We didn't have an overlapping year with the Voyager show, but as soon as Voyager ended, we were supposed to
Boom.
start.
Yep.
And they wanted a year off. They just said, give us a year. Just give us a little bit of a sense again. We need a breath, and we need to kind of really think about what the Bible is for this new show. Not only did they not give them that time, but the Bible that they had brought forward, the studio and the network rejected. The first year of Enterprise was supposed to be us on Earth getting the ship off the ground. And whether that would or would not have who knows. But I think it's most notable to me that on the third episode, I bumped into Brannon at Crafty, and he said, "Hey, if you have any ideas, feel free to drop by the office." It's like it's episode 3.
Right.
Of season 1. You're suggesting that I stop by with ideas. I thought, uh-oh.
Yeah. I'm sure he was feeling down at that point. I'm sure, he was probably being kicked around because I thought that would have been a great idea, launching the ship at the end of season 1. It would have required a patience of the modern audience, I think.
It would have required patience of the modern audience. I would have assumed probably been more political, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, there would have been politics.
Who knows? I mean, for me, if there was anything that I would have wanted to do more of, and I think this is also from brief conversations I've either had or participated in panels with Brandon, felt was true, is that I think there was a wish that it would have been a little darker. Mm-hmm. There's an episode that again, this is a story I've told 1,000 times. At 64, everything I've said 1,000 times. I should start making shit up. I really should. The time Dominic came to my trailer in a bikini, it was a game-changing experience. That's going to be the thing that this is.
Oh, Dominic.
This is going to be Dominic's. Well, are you telling people I came to you? I didn't get a bikini. I certainly wouldn't have come to your trailer. No, I'm just fucking with you, Dominic. There was an early episode. I used to kind of try and sneak peek the scripts. I'd go to the hair and makeup trailer. I think I can safely say now that my in was the hair trailer, because I wasn't featured necessarily in every episode. And at that time, I had much more ambition. I don't have any ambition now. And I was going to try and see if, hey, an episode I'm light in or not used at all, maybe I can get another show and do another show at the same time. I believe, in fact, Stargate I was doing while I was shooting.
Oh, during the middle of the Star Trek season. That was one of the questions I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I think, and I'm not positive, because there were a number of things. They let me do a movie Out of Time. They let me do Angel. I did a number of things. I began to not double dip as it moved into this third or fourth season. It became a little trickier. They were using me a little bit more. I think I was possibly wearing out their patience. But at the time, I was like, am I going to be? So I go to the hair trail. Am I going to be in this episode? So they gave me the first draft of episode 3 or 4. And there was a scene, because we were afraid of a teleporter, where somebody teleports back up, from the planet. And
they got twigs sticking out of them.
Well, so the first draft, they had their ass where their head should be. You've heard all my stories.
Oh, I haven't heard that. I just remember the episode.
Yeah, no. In the first draft it's like, Jesus,
wow.
His ass is where his head should be, or some, horrible, which I thought, oh, great, that's great. And then by the time, the network and
I didn't know that.
Then the final version was, oh, there's a twig sticking out of his ear. Dr. Phlox will just cut that off. That, to me, was the crystallization of what I thought was wrong with the show.
Yeah. As long as all the parts be back up, Phlox will put him in the right places.
Well, or he doesn't. Or you've got a crewman who's like, like in the Orville, it's like Ass Man. It's like, I remember how that you got there. I remember that day. The weapons, we were afraid the weapons were going to explode. There was an early episode, I think it was the second episode, when we find a ship and we explore it, and all the various crewmen are being drained of their lifeblood. They're all dead. It's like, I love that. Didn't like the way the episode ended, but I thought, oh, we're off on the right foot here if we're going to be dark. And then it began to kind of, I think, become a little bit too much like your daddy's Star Trek, Instead of leeching people, I was giving them a hypo spray to cure their cancer. I would have preferred it have a little bit more of the sensibility that I think some of the current shows maybe have a little bit more of,
Yeah, the Osmotic Eels could have gotten some more work for sure.
Yeah, a little more twisted. But that, who's to say that's that's just my taste. I mean, that could have, we could have only lasted 2 seasons if they'd done what Billingsley wanted. They never took any of my ideas. Picardo on Voyager, it's like, Picardo, all he had to say was, I'm having an affair with Seven of Nine. Done. I'm an opera singer. Done. It's like, he would hide in the bushes, so he would leap out at Rick and Brandon with these notions, and I think they just gave him whatever he wanted just to keep him at bay. But me, any notion I had, it was like, no.
With episodes like Dear Doctor and with Similitude, I can't imagine that show without you. So, but that's just me.
It was my cockamamie ideas. I did actually. I suggested, but I don't think this is actually what they would say. I don't think they heard it from me. Was that Dr. Phlox hibernated and that they woke him up in an episode prematurely? Now that did get in there. I would say I thought of that, but they would say no. We thought of that independently.
I don't care what it tastes like.
I went in one time. Actually, the part I love about that episode that only a few people had caught is that somebody says Mayweather needs you, and I looked under the sheet as if Mayweather was down there. So I threw in a few gay references.
Oh, it's funny.
Just for my own shits and giggles. I was like, oh, that made it in. A few people have caught that.
So, but either during season 2 or between season 2 and season 3, it would have been, because this is around spring, early summer 2002. You did Stargate SG-1.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about getting the other guys.
Well, this is, of course, where I don't remember, because you remember certain things in your career. You remember where you were when you got a pilot, or you remember where you were when you got a series or an interesting movie. But for episodic television, you don't necessarily remember anything about how you got an episode of television. I didn't audition. I know that.
You did not.
I did not.
Okay.
It was an offer, and I think the gag is that they were looking for somebody who would have a Star Trek background, because they thought it was funny that he would be, I worship at the altar of Roddenberry. And for all I know, they, went through every Star Trek actor out there until it was
no way.
It's either Billingsley or we trashed this script. I don't remember who was casting it. I don't remember who the casting directors were. My guess is they called my people and offered it to me, and I don't remember whether or not I was on Enterprise at the time and I had to work it out, or whether or not I had to kind of like say, hey, there's Star Trek jokes in here. Is it okay to do it? I don't remember any of that. I do remember that I loved the actor who played Felger.
Patrick McKenna.
Patrick McKenna. I adored working with him. He's every bit as charming and marvelous as you would expect him to be. And I think, I don't know if this is possible. At this point in time, he's as old as I am. I don't think he cares if I out him as a dope smoker. But at some point in time in the process, I think we were staying in the same hotel. He said, Pelger, I thought you'd never ask. So, yeah, so we enjoyed, this is before the modern age of dope, where it's like you walk down a city street and you're stoned.
It's like, whew, yeah.
Yeah. This was back in the day when it was like, and he's a Canadian. So as an American, if I'm flying up to Canada, it's like, all right, I'm not smoking any dope this week. But I said, I'm not a huge dope smoker anymore, but I was a little bit more then. But Patrick was like, well, I just drove into town, so I adore you. Okay, so now there's 2 things that are going to be talked about. 1, when Dom came to my trailer in a bikini, and 2, smoking dope with Patrick. This is one of those interviews where my wife is going to say, "What? You said what?"
It just felt natural at the time. You know?
Like, I know. What can I tell you? Yes, a lovely man. I would be remiss, however, in not saying to the powers that be, whoever the fuck the powers that be were, they brought back Felder, but they didn't bring back Coombs.
I did not notice that for sure.
Yeah,
it was pretty obvious.
I'm sorry, but
you're a team.
It's Bing and Bob, so I don't know how I don't know how you get away with that shit.
Okay. One of my other questions for you was going to be, was there just a scheduling conflict with the next one? So as far as you remember, there wasn't.
I never got asked. I
Okay.
never got asked.
You're sure of that?
I'm positive. Yeah,
Okay.
I am. I would. Oh yeah,
That's such a
I've been dining out
loss.
on my upset for 20 some years.
Okay.
It's like they brought back Belger and they didn't bring back Coombs. Now I would have, because I would have loved to have gone back because I loved him so much. It would have been, he's so much fun to work with.
How familiar were you with SG-1 at the time? It was just in its 6th season.
I was unfamiliar with SG-1 then. I am unfamiliar with SG-1 now.
Okay.
I saw one episode of SG-1 and it happened to be that one.
You should watch it. I can send you some selects.
No, it's all right. I haven't seen a ton of Star Trek either. I like to read.
I wouldn't have noticed.
This is the thing that I enjoy the most. So I'm very sparing in my television. It's ironic that I am an actor. I should have been a writer, but it's lonely and there weren't any girls to meet in the library as opposed to the rehearsal halls.
Oh gosh. Symmetrical book stacking. I think that Ray Stans would have something to say about that back there, John. So maybe you've got ghosts.
Oh yeah, no, this is just one room. It's a sickness. It beats heroin.
What did you think of the script for the other guys? I'm assuming you rewatched it when I gave it to you. Did you enjoy it?
I watched part of it.
Okay.
I watched part of it just to refresh my memory.
Yeah.
Well, I can say this. What I remember is, Star Trek they're extremely rigid, and which I understand. I mean, most television shows are. There's no you don't fuck around.
Yeah.
You don't fuck with the lines. In large part, I suspect because of Richard Dean Anderson and you know more than I, but the sense I had, if I remember correctly, of being there was that there was a very playful and kind of loosey-goosey quality. It wasn't improvised, but there was a willingness to entertain.
Correct.
More sportiveness. So I don't really remember whether or not Patrick and I made shit up, but I definitely think there were scenes as I was watching it where I think that might have been a little bit on the fly.
Okay.
Ops. Why don't you just call it operations? I have feeling some of that might have been mucking around.
Well,
but I don't know. I could be wrong.
Well, if you would like,
is this Patrick? Who's this?
You can.
Is this him? Is this him?
You can ask him.
Oh no! Oh no! Look at you!
Surprise, John.
Look at you. Oh, I outed you as a dope smoker. Oh my God, have mercy.
Dude, I haven't been able to hear a thing. So it's all good news though. It's true.
Yes, I didn't think that you were probably keeping it a secret, and maybe you're not anymore. But I remember. I don't remember anything that happened on the set, but I definitely remember going up to your room to smoke some marijuana and having a high.
Yes. Well, Vancouver in the 90s, I think we had to.
Well, I could, as an American, I had to fly in without anything, so it was like
we're here to help. We're here to help, John.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming back, Patrick. Yeah, how are you doing?
Excellent, doing excellent. Life is good up here in Ontario. It's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day, gentlemen.
Yes. Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
You look. If I'd known you were coming, I would have cleaned up. I just thought this was. Just look at you. You look so elegant and.
Well, it's Sunday. It's Mother's Day. I've got them trapped in another room. So.
They being wife and kids.
Yes. I have. My son he turns 40 this year, wow. which I think was older than we were at the time. I believe.
I was in. I think I was 42, maybe 41.
Yeah. Yeah, you're younger than me. I just turned 64 like 2 days ago.
I turned 64 on the 20th.
Wow.
Hey, I didn't realize.
You were
20. Yeah, absolutely.
Patrick, any memories of working with John?
After the years of therapy, I blacked most of them out. But I'll tell you, what I do remember, it was hard not to laugh constantly because we were just thrown together. We never knew each other. And suddenly it was called The Other Guys. There was this assumption of a team. And I just found it was magic that John was this incredible open energy that we both just kind of acknowledged that. And we fell into these roles pretty easily. And it seemed to really work well. People really seemed to enjoy it. And like John said, come up to my hotel room. We'd have fun. It was really easy just to hang out with them. And then work was someone else's words, but we're still hanging out.
I couldn't remember whether or not I was just saying I had been on Star Trek where they were so rigid and anal about, you can't drop a syllable. They seemed, as I recall, pretty loosey-goosey about, whether or not we wanted to muck around a smidge. I don't remember how much of that we kind of invented on the fly.
Quite a bit. I remember quite a bit because there was things like, I think there was a portion when they say something like being hinky. And I think you said, that's not a word. And then we got to play. All the rest of it was us just playing about that. There would be oftentimes there was the lines would infer where we would go, and then you and I would just kind of carry on from there.
that was my memory. That was my memory.
Yeah, because you're right. I remember you were coming off Star Trek, and you were mentioning that at the time, even how strict they were there, because that was my first introduction to sci-fi anything. So you were this great shepherd into this. There's a way to play the comedy and the story at the same time, and it was really nice.
I don't know if that's the case or not. I think I was still on Star Trek though.
Yep, I were in the middle.
Yeah,
yeah. No, they were like, if you dropped I mean, it was sort of like they took themselves. Well, I love them all. They're all dears, but yes, it was a little bit like doing the West Wing. It's like, stop. There's a the in there. It's like, all right, I don't think the scansion was ruined, but all right, let's go back. And
I do remember that being you and I having like how to say Goa'uld.
I forgot about that.
Everybody was saying and you'd ask them how to say it, and they'll say Goa'uld, and the next I go, oh no, it's Goa'uld. Then it's Goa'uld. It's like, oh my goodness.
I also
and they always had close-ups on us when we would do it.
I broke my glasses in the middle of it, and I think we basically said continuity be damned, and we just put some Scotch tape on, and I wore the glasses for the rest of the that's something that I don't think anybody's ever said anything about, but yeah.
Oh no, that's great. Science perfect.
Yeah, I guess I think we said, well, I don't remember the director, but I remember we liked him, but I think the director said something to the effect of, well, you found some Goa'uld Scotch tape and you just goodbye me.
Right, moving on. Yeah.
Goodbye me.
The other guy's director would have been Martin Wood, who directed much of the show. He's a fantastic director and very easygoing.
Yeah, that was what I found about the set too. They were such a family, that it was really easy to step in. That they weren't overwhelmed by too much. It's kind of like they knew the boundaries, and I think nobody. Sorry, John.
You came back, didn't you? You went.
Yeah. They said you're scared. I'm all excited. I got the script. And they go, you're coming back. Oh, great. I says, where's John? John couldn't get off work. It's like, what? What am I doing here? What do I do? I don't know what to do without John.
I've been telling people for years they didn't ask me back. I don't remember if it was a scheduling thing.
That's what they
would
told
think
me.
It would have been because you guys were great.
Yeah, that's what I was told. It was a scheduling thing. Like John couldn't get off work. I was like, oh man. Again, I figure, you're not going to give up Star Trek for this. But at the time, you didn't know.
I was for a while. They were being very gracious and letting me double dip. So maybe they put the kibosh on that, or I was busy in an episode. But my memory of it was that I was just like, stunned later on to find out that they brought back Fellinger and they didn't ask Coombs.
Oh man, I didn't realize that.
I could be wrong. I know it's like Road to Bali. It's like you can't do the Road to Bali with Bing
right. And I don't. Yeah, the other episode was very, very different. It was a very different one. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There is something about the fish out of water situation that these guys are in, where SG-1 is doing its job, and then the fanboy has to come along and muck it up. But then SG-1 gets into a situation where the bottom falls out from under them. And it's a lot like Galaxy Quest, where the fans have to pull together to get the people that they love home. I found it very similar to that.
Yeah, it was really neat that way where, the fanboy element was so easy for my character to drive forward, and John being that voice of reason unreasonably all the time.
Voice of
you can't do that, big guy. You can't do that. It was a nice little pairing that way, because it'd be like, well, to Felger's character, it was a challenge for, therefore he's definitely going to do it.
What was the second episode? The episode that you went back and I wasn't.
I created a something for the computer that screwed up the ring, and no one could get back anymore. So I had to develop a program that would fix the ring. So I had to go into the ring with Amanda, and fix it.
He
And
broke the
so that
entire Stargate network across the whole galaxy.
Amanda, you had as I recall, your character had a big crush on Amanda too. So
yes.
Did that pay off? Did you
in a different way? They had me like I still had the crush on her second one, but the girl who played my assistant,
Chloe,
Chloe, yes, her and I ended up having the relationship. She had a crush on me the whole time, and then in the end, I finally reciprocate.
Yes, the actress was Jocelyn Lowen.
And she was wonderful too.
Yeah.
Well, then I'm sure that they threw out Coombs and they brought in a love interest. So Jocelyn, send me some of your residual money. I'm the one.
That's right. You were the original love interest.
Right. That's what they should have done. That would have been
in the future.
That would have been foundational.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, really.
Love to watch a spinoff with the two of you at some point.
Oh yeah.
So come on, get some of this on.
You know, nervously, that when you're a young actor and you're having a set like we were that week, everyone starts talking about spinoff and your ego just starts flying, you know, because they're going, if this show has spinoffs, they can do that. Even if we go 12 episodes, I'm happy, you know.
Yeah. I don't remember if that came up. I don't think I would have taken that terribly seriously, but I would.
No, my ego did.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Patrick, this is really cool to have you pop in and say hello.
Thanks, guys.
I would love to have you guys back later this year, just the two of you one-on-one. Do you think that there's a possibility we could make that happen?
I wouldn't think so, no.
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, of course.
Now, why don't you have us on with Patrick's love interest, and then could you find me a love interest?
I think your wife would have a problem with that, don't you think?
I want a fictitious love interest.
That's funny. Patrick, thank you so much for stopping in. This was really
no
cool.
worries. Good to see you, John. All the best.
I have one more question for Pat. Where do you live, Patrick?
I'm north of Toronto, a couple hours north of Toronto.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. And you're still down in LA?
I'm down in LA, but I'd love to catch up with you sometime in person. If I'm ever in the hood or you're ever in the hood, please don't hesitate to call.
Oh, thank you, brother. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Take care. Best to your family.
Ditto.
Thank you, Pat. And happy belated birthday, Patrick.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, yes. Here's to Torians.
Yes, indeed. Until the 20th, my son. Take care.
We're the humblest sign. We don't make much of our greatness.
No. If you don't believe me, ask John.
Exactly.
You take care, sir.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, May 20th is your birthday, John. So happy early birthday to you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I hope that tickled you when you when we opened up the conversation. It was like, why can't we get Patrick? And I'm like, well, we had him on earlier.
I gotta say, I would not have recognized him. He looks so elegant.
Oh yeah, his beard is gorgeous.
Oh, it's gorgeous. I know. It's like Robertson Davies.
The comedy, the banter, the when you get to connect with someone that has good timing on screen. I imagine the stage is much better because it's continuous, but there's got to be something really rewarding in that, in connecting with a fellow actor who you just kind of, you get into this rhythm and this groove with. Like, you can believe that these two, are friends and have this, husband and wife banter, at work. They are work spouses.
Yeah, no, I can't remember what I was reading. I was reading something the other day, an interview with an actress who talked about, chemistry. It's like, well, I'm an actor. I act chemistry. So there are certainly instances where in comedies or in dramas, I have, incredible camaraderie, and sometimes it's not real, and sometimes you have to fake it, and hopefully you're able to pull that off. But in those instances where it's genuine, where it's actually, you really genuinely love the person you're working with, it is a joy to come to work, and not to say that it's that rare avis. I mean, I've been blessed, and I'm sure that's true for Patrick too, with having a lot of people that I've loved to work with down the years. But there are people who are very special in my memory, and Patrick is definitely one of them. I had a great time working with him. The fucking suits, as I recall.
Oh, the Jaffa outfit. I've put one on. They are heavy.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. Yeah. If anybody offered me what are they? Goa'uld?
Goa'uld.
Yeah,
Jaffa.
He reminded me no one pronounced it the same way. It's like, what are you saying? Goa'uld? Yeah, if somebody offered me a Goa'uld Goa'uld part, I'd be like, no, 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 no. Any more than I would be the guy in the suit of armor on a horse. No.
Oh wow, that is something. No, that the episode was one very much like Lower Decks for Star Trek, where it was finally time to look at a group of people who really were the below the line kind of IATSE people at Stargate Command, who were doing all the heavy lifting after the discoveries were made. And it made sense that a lot of them would be very nerdy. You know, it makes sense that those would be the kind of people who would really connect with this stuff. People who grew up watching Star Trek and worshipped at the altar of Roddenberry would be the ones going off world and taking all this shit apart and, you know, putting it all back together again and reverse engineering it for Earth. So there is something believable in that.
It's funny what you remember, because, you know, a lot of, if you're an actor, you don't necessarily see a ton of stuff you're in more than once. So years go by and people ask you questions about it. And for years, I always thought he was the guy who worshipped at the altar of Roddenberry, and I was the guy who made fun of it. I was so certain about that. And then a fan said, oh, no, 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 it was you. I can quote it. And he quoted me the whole scene. It was like, I guess I'll take your word for it.
Well, he's the one who says, you know, we might as well be wearing red shirts. So he's definitely aware of the significance of the part, and it would strike me as something that Coombs would be like one of those people who would, you know, make fun of the other guy for being exactly everything that he was, because part of him resents that in himself for being so nerdy, you know. I would be.
I'll take your word for it. It sounds like you've done a very astute.
I would. Yeah, I'd be pot calling the kettle black if I said that never bothered me about myself. So.
All right.
You know. Jeez. But no, you, Connor, Jolene, you know, there were a lot of the Star Trek actors who got mileage off of, you know, making
Connor had to wear rubber head, as I recall, didn't he?
Oh my gosh, he sure did. He was a wraith in Atlantis. Have you guys ever talked about Stargate?
Only insofar as I got to finally go, nah, because, you know.
Right. Now it's your turn.
I used to come in and make, you know, some fun of them, because I frequently would have episodes off, and I probably are familiar with a little song I would sing. You know, I'd sing day off, 6 days off, and the checks still come. And they got back at me by essentially saying, Rubberhead, you got to be in the makeup chair. So when Connor had to go to the makeup chair and was bitching about it, I was like, you know, yeah.
Yours was prettier.
Mine was prettier, and I don't know how long mine took as opposed to how long his took. Mine was 2.5 hours.
Oh gosh,
I think his quite took that long, but maybe, I mean, I don't remember. He told me once, we were comparing notes. I think we both agreed that it would be a cold day in hell before we ever did another series regular rubberhead guy. Not that I don't think he was a series regular. I think he recurred, but enough to know that it's like, yeah, let this cup from me pass. I just had a conversation with Doug Jones yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah, we may be doing a movie together coming up if they get the funding, and we'd be allies. We'd be co-workers. And I get to be a human.
I have actor friends who say he is a wonderful human being.
Oh, I was making fun of him. I said, honey, you've got to go and find out whether or not you have the Guinness, because you should have the Guinness Book of World Record for giving out the most hugs. He's got, you know, he's a big guy. He's got very long arms.
Yeah.
So he can hug you from across the room. So, you know, you don't even necessarily need to be able to look into his eyes to get a Doug Jones hug. And he'll hug anybody that moves.
And he's got to be up there with Guinness in terms of prosthetics.
Yeah.
Man, oh man. In terms of hours on set under makeup. Wow.
Yep.
All right. Before we move on, aside from the sticklers for dialogue on Star Trek to being open to discovering more a more interesting way of some of the dialogue and reinterpreting some of the dialogue, a little bit of it in Stargate. Were there any other similarities, noteworthy, or differences between the two productions Both had been running for years at this point. Star Trek certainly
Well, I know
several
that
shows in.
you know, Richard had a pretty cushy arrangement, as I recall. He sort of had they scheduled it based around
Yes.
his, you know, his needs, and I think he needed to or wanted to get back to the States. He flew his own plane.
No, I think he flew first class. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
okay. I thought he had a pilot's license.
He
I
could
remember
have. I'm not sure. He went to go home to see his daughter. So yeah.
Yeah, I just knew that it was sort of like, you know, the schedule was interesting because it was arranged around his kind of 3-day-ish work week, as I recall. Maybe it was a 4-day work week, but my memory is it was like, you know, some days were like, well, this is an unusually short day. Richard's done. It's Thursday afternoon, so and so, and then, you know, and then some days were unusually long days because they were trying to get everything in that wouldn't involve Richard. So I remember the schedule was rather odd. But again, you know, this is 20
Yeah.
some years ago, and you don't you don't carry the same memories of an individual episode of a TV show. Um, so I'm afraid I'm sure you've experienced this, having talked to doubtless a lot of guest stars. The one-offs are not as rich in anecdotage.
That's a fair point. The Man from Earth.
Oh yes,
So I can't remember how I got into watching this. If no one has seen The Man from Earth and its sequel, Holocene, I think the first one is.
I would pass on the sequel.
Yeah,
I would pass on the sequel.
it was fine. It was.
I
It was
love
fine.
Richard. I love Richard.
Yeah.
I was like, Richard, don't make a sequel. Let this, you know, it's like you don't make Casablanca 2. I'm not comparing them, but I'm just saying it's like
No, I get it.
the first one ended. It was a lovely ending. Let it be.
It is a. You are riveted to these professors sitting around essentially a campfire debating this question: is our colleague sane? And it's 90 minutes. You're just glued to this. Is this guy actually a caveman, or is he full of crap?
It's a
And
Shaggy Dog story. Somebody who says I'm immortal, and you know, we've kind of pulled the story out of him, and he tells the story in front of a campfire, as you say, in essence. And I won't say anything more other than, to me, written by Jerome Bixby,
Jerome Bixby.
who wrote the classic Twilight Zone episode "It's a Good Life" with Billy Mooney, and some Star Trek episodes. For those people who are familiar with old sci-fi, was really, I think, one of the great, you know, 60s sci-fi writers. The script has a little mustiness. I think some of the humor to me was a little off, but the story and the essence of what he's wanting to talk about, the difference between religiosity and spirituality, I loved. We made it for $9. As I recall, we had the same thing for lunch every day. It's like, isn't this the same chicken we had yesterday? Yeah, and it's the same chicken you'll have tomorrow. So don't look for high production values. If somebody sneezed, a wall would fall down. But it was a lovely group of actors: Tony Todd
Oh
and
man.
William Katz, and the guy who played the Immortal probably is not familiar to most people, but did an amazing job with a shitload of dialogue.
Yes, he sure did. Yes, David Lee Smith.
David Lee Smith. We were shooting like 14 pages a day, which for anybody who knows anything about making a movie or making TV shows is like, what? Not a lot of setups because it was basically a bunch of people sitting around the campfire. So, you know, you can kind of cut down a little bit on, you know, let's move everything around. But still, in terms of what the actors have to do, 14 pages a day, and a lot of it was him with our reaction shots. Wow.
You're right. Exactly. As it's the subject matter, as a Christian, you know, going in and watching this, the Christian part of me is like, okay, I believe what I believe, and the inquisitive Star Trek part of me is like, the first book was written 60 years after Christ's death, you know, in terms of the Gospels. What if, you know, some things are not necessarily ironclad.
And I don't want to give anything away for those who haven't seen the
Okay,
movie.
good point. Good point. I'll shut up there.
Yeah, I'll
Watch
just
it.
say that, it's like, what if a guy lived forever and said, "Yeah, I'll tell you about my past lives," and he lived through a lot of interesting shit. Um, I'm not as completely taken with the movie as some other folks are, but I have to say I get a lot of very positive response to it, and for what it was made for, and for
Hmm.
what our thoughts and hopes for it were, it is done very well, and it's very surprising to me how much resonance it's had for folks down the years.
Science
Um,
fiction need not be flashy.
no,
It
no, in
just
fact,
needs to make you think.
yeah, 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 yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it is really a short story filmed, you know,
Hmm.
and I think that's the thing for or a novella filmed. So for people who are looking for bells and whistles, but as a piece of prose, it's one of those things. It's like I will continue. I will read on.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. I've got a few fan questions for you, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, please.
John Smith wants to know, John, do you have a favorite scientist?
Favorite scientist? Well, I have a favorite scientist's book title, which is Richard Feynman's "Why Should I Care What Anybody Thinks," which I think is great. And I may be garbling that title, but that is the gist of it, and I believe that is a mantra of mine. You'll probably find the accurate title of
What do
that.
you care what other people think?
What do you care what other people think?
Interesting. All right.
Which is to a certain extent about, I think, his and I think to a certain extent what a scientist's core belief has to be, which is I pursued the factual,
Yeah.
and it's irrelevant what the what your beliefs are. I pursue the factual,
Hmm.
but
Wow.
also for somebody who, because I do rather admire him, for somebody who chooses to go into a world to a certain extent, going and becoming an actor is, not without people saying, "What the fuck?" For people who pursue something they love, and are passionate about, and bump into resistance, I think it is absolutely true and absolutely right to say, "To thine own self be true, and do not let other people's opinions dissuade you
Hmm.
from pursuing what it is that you want to be and what you want to do. Why
Hmm.
do you care what other people think about you?" You know.
Wow. I love it. Absolutely. Marcia, on Enterprise, did anyone prank you by adding an unexpected animal to your collection?
Now I pranked many people. I pranked more people than anybody else. In part because I had more time on my hands to concoct pranks. There was one instance, it was in Dear Doctor, we stopped and picked up an alien in marooned spacecraft, and there was a very brief scene on the bridge, and it was without dialogue. So over the silent action, you would hear the doctor, and the gag is the doctor was reading, dictating a letter. You would hear the doctor say something to the effect of, "We stopped and picked up a marooned alien spacecraft, and I'm amazed once again at how human beings are so willing to take these incredible risks, noble human beings, wonderful human beings, blah, blah, blah." And the action when we film it without dialogue is 35 seconds, and on the view screen there's a maroon ship. So they were going to play my dialogue so that they would be able to match the action to the length of the speech. So I
Yeah, it's a
substituted,
letter to Dr.
yeah.
Lucas.
So I substituted a speech which I pre-recorded. So on action, and what you hear is I was standing. Normally, I wasn't on the bridge. I was standing behind the captain, and it was so I was like, "Look at the ass on the captain. How firm and round and ripe it is. I wonder if there's some pretense under which I could get him down to sick bay for some kind of proctological examination," which did break everybody up. Um,
I've heard
um,
this story. That's
yeah. So I,
great.
I also dressed up. This kind of bit me in the ass. Scott had a birthday party, and I didn't think he was going to invite his fucking family. So on the set, I dressed up as a woman, and I came running in like, pretending I was his long lost, previous wife. Um, and his family was there, including his little children, who
Oh
first,
no.
and I was like, "Go back here! How could you have left me at the altar?" And his littlest child was like,
Oh no.
"You brought your family, huh? I didn't think you brought your family." Yeah, so that was yeah.
The two of you in A Night in Sick Bay.
Yeah,
I loved it.
that was in many respects my favorite episode because I didn't get a lot of chance to work with Scott, and I love him. He's such a dear man. He's got a great sense of humor, and it was more of a whimsical kind of dee
Yeah.
episode. Some fans didn't like that, which I kind of
You have
get,
to
but
take risks every once in a while. You're on season 18 for God's sake, you know?
this was season two. I think people were. I
I
think people were a little concerned that it sort of. I did not share this concern, but a little concerned that it made the captain somehow seem foolish or small minded or petty. You don't remember the particulars of the
It's his
episode.
dog.
But he'd also,
Yeah.
like, he was he took umbrage that some alien species took umbrage with him, and he wasn't going to back down. Anyway, blah 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 blah. It wasn't a fan favorite in many respects, but it was a favorite of mine
Mm.
because I got to spend a lot of time with Scott, and it was the episode in which we learned the most about the Denobulan culture, including that we were polyamorous, which I tried with a raised eyebrow to suggest meant that I got it on with the guys as much as I got it on with the girls, so that I could claim, as I have ever since, that I was the first bisexual Star Trek character. I don't think that is actually the case, but I claim it nonetheless.
Do you think I'm sorry for the Stargate fans who are watching, like they're going to go on about that? But I have always wanted to know, John. Um, do you think that the Deno, because they each have three wives and three
Three
husbands,
wives, and each wife has three
and
husbands.
each wife has three husbands?
Yeah.
Do you think that a fourth would be to them would be how would you even think of that? How is that even or do you think that there's some outliers there? Would they be as repulsed by a fourth spouse as we would by more than one? I've
Well,
always wanted to ask you this.
I don't know. That's a really good question. I've never considered it from that vantage point. What I find interesting is that, to me, it apparently is the most crowded. I thought when I
Yeah.
got the part, you've never seen a Denobulan before. I was the first Denobulan. So you kind of come up with a little Bible for yourself, and I think, okay, there are only 10 of us left. It's a monastic planet, we only have sex once every 10,000 years, so that's why I've left, last Denobulan. It turns out it's like, we're packed in like
10
sardines.
billion people on one
And
continent, and they
yeah, it's
don't
like
like to be touched.
a gajillion people who don't like to get touched because it's like, ooh, I value my personal space. But apparently, once the touching happens, it's like anything goes, baby. Everybody into the rose petal bath.
Oh, that's right. The rose.
Yes. So, and it's like, we also, there's an episode when my wife appears on the ship. She spends the whole
She's
episode chasing
great.
after Trip. Dr. Phlox is like, are you fool? You could have had a rose petal bath with this
Yeah.
magnificent woman. I think a whole season could have been just based
Easily.
on Nobulan mating practices.
I just always wondered what their upper limits were. I thought it would have been really interesting to us because we are kind of made to feel like, aren't we like
Well, also,
small-minded?
I couldn't
Where
do
is their limit?
I couldn't do the math. It's like the family tree. It's like, okay, so I have three wives. Each of the wives has three husbands. Each of the husbands has three wives. Each of those wives has three husbands. It's like, where does my? It's like he's like my 90th cousin's.
It's beyond computing.
Yeah, it's like Christmas. It's like you spend like a week and a half opening presents. Where do you draw the line?
Absolutely. But
Can
why
never
else
figure
be
it.
polygamous?
I know. I can't imagine being a Denobulan anthropologist. It'd be like,
Oh,
gee,
man.
too
Absolutely.
complicated.
Lockwatcher wanted to know, you've been on so many iconic shows. How did your role as Michael Latham come about in season 7 of 24? And what was it like working on that series? I have not seen the show, so.
Manny Coto.
Manny.
Yeah, Manny hired me a few times. Yes, I was not. I didn't. Spoiler alert. I die. So I think I was only on three or so episodes. I am kidnapped and I am tortured into giving up some important bit of information that allows a terrorist group to be able to bring down our planes and shut off our electric grid and blah 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 blah. A rescue attempt is made, but by then I've been wired to detonate. And there's one time I met Kiefer Sutherland. He walks in the room and I blow up. So it was like, thanks, nice to meet you,
It's pretty
Kiefer. That's
definitive.
pretty definitive. Yeah, yeah. I ain't going back on that one. Yeah. I'm impressed you know the name of the character though. I that would have stumped me.
This Lockwatcher, he's one of our regulars. So
Yeah.
Joey wants to know, did you ever meet, this was part before you were hired, but did you ever in passing meet DeForest Kelley?
No, no, he
Okay.
was I can't remember when DeForest died, but he died.
96.
Yeah, yeah. I moved to LA in '94. I had a theater career in Seattle. I had a theater company that adapted fiction for the stage. I was an acting teacher. I had done some film and TV, but I had always intended just to be a stage actor. And it was only when the little bit of film and TV work that was in Seattle dried up, and I couldn't quite figure out how to make a living just from a stage, that I decided to move to LA. So he was gone by the time I arrived,
Okay.
and certainly by the time I got Star Trek.
Okay. Did you
And I never met, actually, I never met Spock either. I did
Leonard?
sit on Kirk's lap in a Toyota, however. I was on a flight to a Seattle convention with Bill. We'd never met, and I was going to say hi, but I'm going to wait till we land. And we land, and there's nobody to pick us up. So I'm kind of looking around, and I see him, on the phone, looking kind of upset. And I get a text, and it's the guys who are like, on their way. It's like, oh, sorry, we're stuck in traffic. We'll be there any minute. And it's like, I'll go tell Bill because
Is this for a convention?
yeah, for a convention.
Okay.
And so clearly, Bill and I are going to be picked up together.
Okay.
Going to go to this convention in Seattle. So I start walking over to Bill, and he turns and he looks at me, and he goes, "It's like the Shatner wave off." It's like, yeah, I'm on Star Trek, motherfucker. You can't give me the Shatner wave off. So I said, no, 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 no. We're in the same car. I'm on the current iteration of Star Trek. This is some years back when Enterprise was still on. We're going to be picked up and taken to the convention hotel together, you and me together, and my wife, and apparently your daughter, and the Volvo or whatever it is. A Toyota shows up, and it's the driver and two other people. So it's like, okay, clown car. 7 of us and our luggage have to get into this Toyota Camry, and so I'll sit on your lap. So I was bouncing around on Kirk's lap. It's like, oh, you ever been to Seattle before? Oh, where would you? Oh, yeah. So he was asking me for lunch suggestions, and I said, "Oh, I should go to the Pike Place Market." And there was a Long Beat, and he said, "Well, I'm meeting Leonard there. Would you like to join us?" I think at this point it's like, well, I'm bouncing on the man's penis, so I figure he's got to invite me. It's like, well, you want to come to lunch? It's like, no, no, I don't. This is as much delight as I intend to take for one day in you, Bill. No. And I just said, no, you're meeting your pal for lunch. It's like, you don't want me to. But I thought every Star Trek fan's fantasy, it's like, nah, I'll pass. Pass.
Yeah,
So
that's a tough situation. Yeah,
Nah, it's like, that was my one chance to meet Leonard. Never met him.
Yeah.
Consequently, I've bumped into Bill on several other occasions. He's repressed the memory of my giving him a boner. This isn't a children's show, is it? Are there like
I'd like to keep it PG-13.
Oh, too late. Too late. I've the Dominic in a bikini, me delighting Bill Shatner. I should have asked you at the outset. Bonnie always says, "Did you check with them?" Like,
John, you've been a delight, and I'm gonna have one final fan question for you.
Okay.
Alaskan Ballistics wants to know, what role would you want Coombs to have if we get our Stargate continuation, which has been bantied about forever? Let's say all the cards were on the table, all the different characters could come back. Where would Simon Coombs be now?
Well, I would like to think that it turned out that, even though Felcher had a love affair, that he found out later in life that actually he was gay, and that he and Coombs have been living together for a while in some kind of a bachelor pad in I don't, forgive me, I don't know the show, so I don't know.
Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs, all right. And we've been called out of retirement because our combined scientific expertise is needed to do X. And X is, and then whatever after that, I don't care. Antics ensue. I think it's like, da 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 da. Anything that fulfills the Oscar Felix would be great.
Gosh. And I had a comment from Evie Cahill. Look, everyone, David's got Coombs with him.
Jeez. Foul-mouthed Coombs. I apologize if I've alienated any children on Mother's Day, no less. Good heavens to Betsy.
Before we let you go, tell me about the Hollywood Food Coalition.
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, the other organization that is very dear to my heart and that I actually have spent a great portion of my last 8 years advocating for. The Hollywood Food Coalition has been around for about 38 years. We started by providing street care, street service, primarily through the medium of a daily meal, a nightly meal, to all comers. It has evolved into an organization that, in addition to our nightly meal program, serving about 300 or so people, 7 nights a week, haven't missed a night, 38 years.
Wow.
We also now rescue about 2 million pounds of food a year, and we try to share it with small social service organizations to help buttress and augment their meal programs. So what we're trying to do is identify a niche in our ecology, in LA's ecology, and say food is a medium of connectivity that helps build coalitions in the social service sector so that all sorts of folks who need to work together, the folks who are providing mental health services, drug and alcohol rehabilitation services, the folks who are working with street kids, all of them can kind of come together to learn about each other through the connectivity that food provides. And that's the kind of role we try and fill.
That is so cool.
And then the last part of the work, which is to me in a major way the most important and also the most challenging, is to work with other food-centric organizations that share a similar set of goals to try and address problems that are systemic in nature that can only be addressed collectively. How do you find more food to rescue? How do you refrigerate it, store it, transport it? How do you find the places where that food can go? How do you do all that work fast? Because the food that you're picking up is already, close to its end date. And you got to get it to an end user pronto. It takes a village to do that work. And the natural inclination in the social service sector, unfortunately, is to silo. A social service organization operating on a relatively small budget is very precious about their funding sources. So when you go to them and you say, hey, what if we worked together to try and find some funding sources that could, for instance, pay for a dispatcher that we would all share in? And the dispatcher's job is to go out and find more food than any of us can find. That is a hard thing. It's a hard thing to have the headspace as a not-for-profit to look that far ahead and to figure out how to do that work. But to me, that's how growth happens. There's a wonderful woman named Frances Perkins who was Roosevelt's labor secretary, who really, I think, was probably instrumental in creating the New Deal because she was doing a lot of his work in New York during the Great Depression, trying to figure out how do we come together as a village of people to figure out systemic change, programmatic change that we all share in, we all help to effectuate.
I have a couple of things I want to say. The thing that,
which is a federation.
Which is a federation. Yeah, right. A federation. Absolutely. The amount of food that we waste in this country alone is embarrassing. And secondly, I think that it's so easy to forget how important the breaking of bread is to coming together as people, hearing one another out, and not just, hearing, but listening and understanding. I think it's so important that you bring people together. It's so cool that you're doing this because you can bring people together this way, not only to feed and nurture them in terms of the physical body, but also their souls as well.
Well, and the other thing
understanding one another.
Yeah, and the other thing to me is that something that I'm very passionate about, and I don't want to take up more of your time. I have no place to be, so
no, please.
One of the things that I'm very proud of about this organization, and that really means a lot to me, it means a lot to me about Star Trek, is that we've had thousands and thousands and thousands of people volunteer down the long arc of time. And by volunteering and by serving and cooking and helping to provide for people in need, it breaks down some of those barriers that I think have to be broken down between people who have and people who have not. There's something about helping somebody, meeting a person, providing them with food or clothing or advice or assistance or counsel or whatever, that changes your perception about what it means to be generous in the world.
Correct.
And we live right now, I think, in an era in which there's a sense of pugilism. It's like, the other guy's out to get me, out to screw me. It's the language in America is very much about, if the other side wins, it will be the end of us.
Yeah. I have to take care of me at all costs.
Yeah, and we view each other as enemies. And in the end, I don't have any solutions other than finding a way in your own backyard. I'm a-religious, and I appreciate that you are not, but I have read the Bible, and I do believe there's much beauty in it. And I've always loved the phrase, brighten the corner where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is to me what we are asked to do.
Mm-hmm.
As people. If you have privilege, which I have had,
mm-hmm.
and your circumstances are appropriate, then I think finding a way to identify your volunteer bliss and giving time back to a community to help build something where you are, where your home is really important.
I don't know how you were raised, but for me,
I was raised by rabid atheists.
No, not speaking of that. I'm talking about the food. I when I was really little, we didn't have a lot. And so to this day, you throw away you throw away food that you can eat. That's pretty much cardinal sin number one in my household. It's up there. It's up there. It's like, you eat what you have been blessed with, you know? And if there is an opportunity to feed others, do it.
Yeah.
So
it's hard. I mean, it's not, and the pros and cons of living in a capitalist society, and I'm not a socialist, but there is a part of me that feels like a managed economy is makes sense. When I look at what the Scandinavian countries do, that makes sense to me. That a strong social safety net that doesn't allow people to end up living in a gutter seems to me part of a social compact that we should adhere to. I will say that the nature of the capitalist society is it's rooted in create impulses.
mm-hmm.
So you can sell people shit. And so, the overconsumption is based on an overproduction. We produce a lot of food, and it is natural enough that we are not going to be able to consume all that we produce. It is inherent in a capitalist structure. So I don't think it is a moral failing so much as it is a set of systemic challenges that have to do with an economic structure and a production capacity structure. If I could wave a magic wand, I would move our country dramatically to the left.
There is so much purposelessness, and there are so many places, including these two organizations that we've talked about today, where people can provide time and energy and discover that, yes, while you're here, for the blip that you're here, you do have an opportunity to give something back and discover a purpose, potentially, as a result.
And while, I'm always obviously, the Hollywood Food Coalition, which is hofoco.org.
Yep.
If you're interested in supporting us, huzzah. But I also, am a great believer. We have something called Trektivism. I should promote two things. One, every January, to raise money for the Hollywood Food Coalition, I do something called Trek Talks, which is an 8-hour long, like Jerry Lewis-esque telethon. We've raised about $115,000 a year for the last 3-ish years, heavily supported by Roddenberry from Star Trek, from the Roddenberry Foundation. And we also have come up with something called Trektivism, which is a podcast on a monthly basis featuring people in the Trek community who are doing cool things, frequently fans, who are just, making a difference in their community. And I really think it's just kind of asking people, any way you can engage. One thing that I started doing years ago was my wife and I, once a month, we would call our friends and say, "Hey, could you put 3 bags of groceries outside your front door? We'll drive around, we'll pick them up. Once we got a carload, we'll take them to the local food bank. If you're around and you want to visit, we'll have a cup of coffee too." Get to reconnect with old friends. You're not asking anybody to make a huge financial contribution, and a car full of groceries, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And it's something specific, and you can do the same thing with clothing or toys. And if the next time you do it, you say, "Okay, hey, Charlie, this time instead of just putting out the 3 bags, would you want to join in and get 5 friends of yours that you would go around and pick up?" So you metastasize, which is what coalition building is to me. Finding ways to metastasize the growth of activism in your community and building your peer network out.
And finding out who your neighbors are as a result.
Exactly. So. And although I'm not religious, we work with so many churches. I mean, what I will say is that although I'm not bent that way, I marvel at how many wonderful actions are taken from faith-based groups, who are walking the walk. And I, have a lot of friends of mine who are religious, spiritual. To me, it's like, the Bible says it's deeds. Show me the deeds. And there are a lot of people out there who do the deeds, and I have deep respect for that.
Absolutely. If you refresh this page, everyone, you will see links to the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network and Hollywood Food Coalition down below, as long as a link to John's cameo as well. You still doing that?
I do still do that. I do still do that. I try and sing songs on my cameos, so you might get a off-tune musical. Sometimes I sing "Happy Birthday" in Denobulan.
John, I have loved this time together. I would love to have you and Patrick back later this year.
My pleasure.
I think that there's a lot to mine in terms of talking about comedy and timing and connecting with someone. I would love to get into that more specifically and talk more about your passion projects as well.
Fabulous. I appreciate that. I look forward to that.
Thank you, sir, for your time so much.
Pleasure. My pleasure. Anytime.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
John Billingsley, everyone. He was Simon Coombs in Stargate SG-1. I'm always so excited to be able to sit down and talk with people who have helped transform my love of entertainment and helped shape me into doing this work, which is sharing these stories with the broader Stargate community. So it means the world to me that John has sat down, and I'd love to have him back. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, please click the like button. It makes a difference with YouTube and will continue to help the show grow its audience. And please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. Giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few days on the gateworld.net YouTube channel. My tremendous thanks to my moderating team. I can't pull the show off without them. Summer, Tracy, Jeremy, Anthony, Marcia, you guys make the show possible week after week. My webmaster, Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web, he's our web developer who keeps the site up and running. I've got a great team of people who are continuing to archive the stories, which will, of some point here, be available on dialthegate.com, so you can read through the transcripts and pull out the individual stories as well. My animators, my archivists, appreciate all of you. We have upcoming, this coming week, we have, let me pull up the name here, Shyla Horsdal, who played multiple parts in Stargate. She's going to be live Friday, May the 17th. Ray Zypho, who played O for the Nox in Stargate SG-1, live Saturday, May the 18th. And then Ben Browder, who played Cameron Mitchell on Stargate SG-1, live Sunday, May the 19th. All those details are at dialthegate.com. I appreciate all of you tuning in. Oh, one question was left for me. One question for me from Teresa MC. Question for David Reed. What's your favorite in the field of science, medical, archaeology? Would probably have to say it would be somewhere in astronomy. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate. I hope you enjoyed that episode. We'll see you on the other side.